Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And this episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And today's guest is Ved Krishna. Hi, Ved.
Hi. Good to see you, Adi.
Good to see you too, and good to have you. I mean, your purpose is an amazing one. I just have to say that. Because your purpose, and I'm going to read it because I love the wording, right? So your life purpose, it's not just your work purpose, it's your life purpose, is to work towards a cleaner planet. And you do it through working ways to scale regenerative packaging solutions globally. That's amazing. You know, every time I use, and I have to, I received something with Amazon Mini. I mean, the box can be recycled, but the plastic, or when we use things that, I feel like, for years to come, it's going to have an impact on our planet. And I feel like, it's like we need to do something else. And that's what you work towards. So tell us a little bit more about your current endeavor in terms of like that regenerative packaging and what are you doing about it?
Yeah, before I get into that, I want to clarify one thing, which is the recycling part. I think as consumers, we just think that if we put it in a recycling bin, it's all done. And I think that's such a misnomer. There is no such thing as recycling. It's only downcycling, and you can only downcycle that much. As soon as you get that, black kind of container or a black bag, it's not going anywhere. So it only has that much downcycling that any material can do. That includes boxes like paper and fiber, and it's not going to be. There is going to have to be an end of use. At some point, it could be 6-7 cycles, but then what? And the second challenge, of course, remains that of what is the feed material. And feed material is also limited in terms of fossil fuels. And we don't realize that, it's going into the recycling stream, and that's fine. And the third aspect is that there's a lot of energy used, even in recycling. So that's the misnomer, and I wanted to clarify that before we went ahead. And of course, talking about our work, we realized a while back, that we wanted to do something really impactful. And you're right, my life's work and our business is all about how do we leave the planet cleaner. And we realized that the size of challenge is so big that we have to think way beyond ourselves. And what we've started doing is that how do you scale packaging solutions which are different? Now, if you look at the ecology around us, it's so well packaged, right? You see oranges and bananas and our skin and coconuts and peanuts and whatever you want to see, and you see that the packaging is so beautifully made. You can make out what's inside from the outside. It gives you an expiry date. Bananas try at least the organic ones start going dark, and things shrink and wrinkle, and they give you all that data from outside. And there is a lot that happens in nature, and we are trying to see how you kind of emulate that. And everything goes back and becomes a source for something else. And that's our mission. You just find a way to emulate that idea that in the end, it's going to be composted and become something else. And we are, of course, in terms of a business, we are trying to scale significantly. We just now have manufacturing in India. We're trying to start a relatively decent sized plant in Guatemala to serve the American marketplace. So that's the idea. We work in 3 different zones: food packaging, which is things like potato chips and chocolates and crackers. You think about banning plastic bags, but when you look inside the bag, it's all of these flexible packaging substrates. So we are trying to change that. Food services, which is like the Chipotle whole food kind of bowls, but try and see how you can do more on the delivery side, containers, and making those compostable. And the traditional work has been in the food wrap and food carry. which has more or less become compostable in terms of burger and sandwich wraps and what you carry outside. So that's the idea, and that's what we are trying to do.
That's great. Well, I mean, I need to give a shout out to Oregon Valley Farms. I love buying their meat, and they use that. It's like the packaging that it comes with. It's totally compostable. I mean, I just put it under the sink, and boom, it's compost. You know, it's decomposed, right? So it's kind of like I don't have to throw away all the, you know, there is no material in between, right? It just like it makes it so easy, and then I feel so good.
It's beautiful.
So
yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so this is the System Simplified podcast, and we're talking about systems. We're talking about scaling. So I love your mission, and you are driven by this amazing purpose. And I interviewed many entrepreneurs that they said, like in order for them to be successful, it's following their purpose, following their dream, following what motivates them. So for sure, from the way you talk, the way everything around you is purpose for sure. You have that as the first component. But now let's talk about your journey as an entrepreneur. So when did that start?
So I had an amazing set of parents, and they were both extremely entrepreneurial in nature. And my father was driven by, building something of substance, and he created a very interesting company. But as luck would have it, at some point he was born with a congenital heart problem and went through some very, very difficult surgeries. And after he came out, he just said, I don't want to do this for all my life. And we said, what do you want to do? And he was like, I want to just take my motorcycle and travel the world. And he had two sons, none of them interested in business, me and my younger brother. And but then I saw that struggle for my father. And back in '99, I was studying in England and decided to go back to India and try and basically relieve my father of his challenges, and then see how the business goes. But it took me about 14 years of kicking and screaming and taking the business down with me to that whole entrepreneurial journey to kind of realize that I don't have to be my father, and he would have not wanted that, and after that time, I realized that there was something else that I wanted to do in terms of serving the earth or serving the planet in some way. And we realized that we were in the packaging business, but we had zero impact. And that's when we really started transforming the business. So and the entrepreneur journey started in '99. I was 24, 25. And, subsequently, I would say the awakening happened around 2014. So about 9, 10 years back. And that's when it really started to change in terms of everything, in terms of performance, profitability, growth. Everything changed from that point when you find what you are really yearning for.
So then how did you make the switch? Like, what did you do?
The first thing I did was fired myself because I was terrible at operations. so, but it took about 4 or 5 different CEOs till we found our current CEO in India. And he came in and we had our own teething issues, but eventually settled down. And he started running the operations really, really well. And that enabled me to look at global growth, strategy, collaborations, visioning, trying to see where we could take the business. I love working with products. So, the products started evolving because, we started spending a lot more time in what we could create instead of what we had. It took a little bit of time, but that was the first thing that I did. Fired myself, realized that, and then of course found the things that I loved and focused more on that, and not focus on my weaknesses.
Right. So what would that be? Like, can you share an example of how that worked and what did you do?
So a good example is in terms of operations, because when you're running something at scale, something will go wrong every day. So, there'll be not even something, there'll be like 100 things going wrong every day. You have multiple factories which are kind of running, and then there'll be customers, and some customer will be unhappy, and there'll be suppliers and all that. So I think one was, of course, withdrawing from operations and having somebody else take the lead who was more driven by operations. And then, of course, that gave me time to think about where we wanted to go as a business. And in particular, if I give an example, it was about product evolution. So one of the things we moved to was we said, okay, these are three challenges that we are trying to solve: flexible packaging, the styrofoams of the world, the multi-layered flexible packaging, and the bags. So those were the three. And we started looking at what were the options and started looking globally. And collaborations happened globally. And we decided to launch something which was totally different from our pulp and paper traditional business, which was the molded fiber or the food services business, which only happened because I relieved myself of the responsibilities of operations. Otherwise, there was too much to tackle, and I couldn't have done that.
Right. Okay. So you basically removed yourself from operations, find somebody that can do that, created you really follow your vision and created, so you were able to more be the visionary and see what lines of products, you should follow. What are some of the challenges that you experienced while scaling the business?
There's always a multitude of challenges. I think the first and foremost challenge comes from the space between our ears, our brains, right? We see limitations instead of seeing possibilities. And I think the first roadblock is always to remove that and to unshackle ourselves. So the first, one of my mentors who really transformed my thinking taught me four things. And those are important. And that's what really changed my visioning. The first point that he made was that there are no coincidences in life. So if you think that this happened just by chance, it doesn't quite work like that. It's like a symphony playing, and you coming into business in India, it's not just by chance. It happened. So what are you going to do about it? So the second point became, it's better to build on what you have rather than trying to find something, a Shambhala somewhere else totally. So you can go meditate in the Himalayas for years, but it's not that you're going to find something very, very different. You already have accumulated a certain amount of knowledge, a certain amount of understanding. Let's try and build on top of that.
So use your resources, your available resources, what you have.
Yeah, absolutely. And the third was, your life is not about yourself. It is about what are the contributions that you're going to make to others or a bigger cause. And the fourth one, which is where I started, was that do not let your brain or your mind or your thoughts limit yourself. Think multiple fold. So I think the real change happened there. But of course, there are numerous challenges that you face apart from your own mindset. The first and foremost was in terms of funding. You need money. And we were in a situation where, I had done enough damage that the company had almost gone down under. So we had come out of that, but the banks were not ready at that point. They were like, guys, you've just come out of this financial doldrum. And we were like, no, we really want to do this. And you see the universe turning things around and coming out with ideas that could enable that journey once you really have conviction. But yeah, the funding was the first part. In terms of product and design, that's probably the second one, because you don't typically the market forces you to toe the line of what is already there. If you want to make a significant change, it takes a lot of letting go of fears, because the market will say this won't work and that won't work and this is what works and you just repeat that and you make a commodity then. So how do you make something different? For that, you have to challenge yourself. And that was probably the second challenge in terms of products and how do you align that. The third in our business, because we were trying to tackle something which was very purposeful, but also people were only driven by the laws of the land in terms of if plastics is banned, then I'm going to take yours. So how do you convince people to switch to what we would call a better alternative, while the price is a little higher and the performance is a little lower? So that's a big challenge. Yeah. So but you always find outliers and customers who are aligned to your thinking. And that's what happened, like we started finding outliers and they were very vocal in their support. And, but it took time. It took time to overcome that. So I would say those three probably were the biggest roadblocks and challenges.
Absolutely. So, I agree with you on the mindset 100%. It's so important. And that's why it's also important to have trusted advisors and coaches and mentors and people that you trust because they believe in you and they can push you through, right? I mean, the second one in terms of like what the market will tolerate. So that's, that's an interesting one because it is like, how do you find the fine line, right, between believing in what you believe in, but what is really, I mean, it has to materialize yourself. So I would assume that at that point you are going to also create surveys or market research, right? But also do it in such a way that you can have your innovative ideas part of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So market surveys for me are a little dangerous at times because they give you what the current market understanding is. It's like the idea of Apple, right? If you go and ask people, do you want a phone with a single button? Nobody will understand. So you have to try and introduce it first. So it's very similar to that. So if we had done, like, for example, we did a market survey in the North American market recently. And we focused, the agency that was doing it, we focused them into finding the pain points rather than finding what is really happening. So what are the customers feeling are the pain points? And that led us to, okay, this is the domain we want to tackle first. But how we are going to tackle and what are the products that we are going to make is not just going to be, and what are the channels we are going to use? It's all of those, right? It's not going to be dictated by what is now. What is the best for the market, and the customer would dictate that rather than saying that, oh, this is how it's done in the North American market and we will follow the same thing. No, it might take a little bit of a challenge, but and maybe the current system is the best, and that's fine. Then we don't want to challenge it. But in terms of products, we want to stand out. We don't just want to give what is there and just then you're just competing in cost or relationship or something like that. You want to provide the customer with products that are inherently superior in terms of performance. What the customer, they do the job better. And that's something that we focus on a lot as an organization, that how do you create products that truly create value? And for that, sometimes market surveys don't work. You have to kind of trust your understanding and your gut and get a general feel from the market of where you're wanting to enter.
That's a very good point. I mean, that's, I guess, the innovation and the imagination and the thinking outside the box comes in. So you need to substantiate it on some data, but you also have to be willing to take the risk and look outside the box for sure. And, and I think the third point that you brought up in terms of the challenges of like, who will be the early adapters? I mean, who will actually take it? Who will be like your brand ambassadors, right? I mean, it is a matter of good public relations, good marketing, good explanation, creating the purpose, pushing on the purpose for sure.
Yeah, people get excited about good products. There are people who do that. There are people who don't focus. For example, we just launched our next stage of products, which is the multi-layered, replacing the multi-layered chocolate packaging in particular. And it was such an interesting experience that we've had with our first launch. So this is a small chocolate brand that is just launched called Brawny Bear, and they are a non-sugar, more puritanical kind of brand. And they just insisted that we want compostable packaging no matter what. We cannot package in, the plastic substrates that are available now. It's just not possible. So, and they were literally insistent. We were trying to keep the costs low, but that also meant that the performance was not as per spec. Right. And they were insisted, don't worry about the cost. They were like, in terms of percentage of our total cost, it's still little in terms of packaging. So even if you double the cost, it's still going to be, instead of 5%, it's going to become 6% or 7% of our cost. And that's fine. We can adjust it. So we have, we do find such radical kind of thinking as well. And then similar experience we had when we were doing our food services. There were some outliers who would come in and say, we want this. There was a woman I remember who called me during the COVID period, and she was like, Ved, you're going to shut down my business. I said, how am I going to shut down your business? He said, what has happened is that I switched to your products and now everything is moved to food delivery. And I refuse to package in a plastic container. and you don't have a solution right now that can work. And my husband says that we have to move online and to these kind of ghost kitchens. But I refuse to package in plastic. So if you don't give me material, I'll shut down. So it was that kind of thinking. Like she was just like, I am not going to use plastic in my products. So either you give me the products or my business shuts down.
So then you had that level of responsibility where you had to actually act, because otherwise it won't work.
Yep,
yeah,
absolutely.
Wow. Ved, what inspires you?
That's a good one. What inspires me? I think once the purpose is found, you remain in a state of inspiration, and everything else is a subcomponent of that. So I think the inspiration has constantly been that we are born for a certain reason. So if I look at connecting all the dots, I'm born in a business family in India, working in packaging, and I have the possibility to make an impact. So all those things mean a lot. Like for some reason, I was born into a family where there were dinner table conversations around business. So I grew up listening to business. All my grandfather knew was business. He would make a phone call, and all he would talk about was what is happening with the raw material situation. And he wasn't even involved in our business. He just knew business, and that's what he wanted to talk about. So I think there's a certain genetics that play. There's some reason my soul chose this path, and I have to honor that. There's certain circumstances that I found myself in a pulp and paper oriented business, and of course, leading to my love for the ecology and the planet, which also came a lot from my parents and my upbringing. And I have to honor that. So I think it is a constant state of inspiration for multiple reasons beyond me. It's not coming from within, it's coming from beyond. And I have to honor that. So I can just choose whether I honor that or I don't. That's my only choice. So of course, for now, it has been a deep endeavor to honor what I've been provided with.
Absolutely. Well, you definitely encompass, you embody that purpose, right? I can see that, I can feel that. Do you feel like you were able to instill that in the culture in your company, like instill that in your employees and your team members?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if maybe I instigated that, but again, it's the universe's symphony. People come together. I'm amazed at the kind of people who just come together, because the kind of team we have today, I could not have imagined. They are all kind of such driven people who know way more than me in their areas, and this whole maverick, crazy group of people has come together. So they are on their own inspired. And like I would say, in our organization, at least, you can talk to anyone in the organization, and it's a team-led business and a team-owned business. We are a listed company, and everybody owns stock. So everybody is driven. Anybody who is operating on the shop floor or going and selling stuff or purchasing, I don't think there'll be anybody in the company who would not espouse the same thinking. So it has gone way beyond me. And it has found meaning for everybody who is part of the organization.
Absolutely. I can totally see that. Wow. You know what? This has been such an inspiring talk in terms of seeing a successful entrepreneur that is following a great purpose, helping the planet, and creating that team around you, and scaling, expanding, working in 3 places around the globe for right now, maybe even more. Very, very, very cool talking to you, Ved. Thank you so much for being a guest. And if our listeners would like to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
I think LinkedIn is the easiest for direct. I have started exploring Twitter, but I'm not very active on it. But both those places it is possible to connect, and I'd love to talk to more people.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast.
Toda rabba, Hadi. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.